Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. It is Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. Who we got coming in, Mark?
We got Cara coming in. I don't know if she called in, but she should be coming in. But Cara Boyd, I just gave her the number, so she should be calling in any second if she hasn't already.
I believe
yes,
she's
I'm
on
here.
the line.
Hey, there's Cara right there. How you doing, Cara?
I'm blessed.
We were talking earlier today about Mr. Chu Roger Brown, who's developing some farmland in South Carolina. He's trying to turn it into some lodge property and some other properties. But your organization that was founded by John Boyd Jr., is the National Black Farmers Association, and y'all have been working representing African-American farmers and their families. And as an association, it looks like y'all are serving tens of thousands of members nationwide and doing a lot of work. And you just mentioned that part of the reason you had got sidetracked on this call was because you're doing what a lot of people are doing in North Carolina and South Carolina, and that's getting ready for this hurricane that's going to come here.
Yes, sir.
So I imagine that Virginia is also a state that is in the farmers are going to try to get their crops to the farmers markets early, because I know that here in North Carolina they've declared that they want to try to get the farmers to the market, I guess, in the next 2 or 3 days. So they're saying that the storm might hit on either Wednesday or Thursday. So I imagine that is something that you are trying to tell your farmers about, is that they have the opportunity to get their crop, if it's already out or been picked already, to the markets and everything, because I did hear that on the news here in North Carolina that they were encouraging people to get it to the markets early, because I believe one of the last hurricanes people did not get the market on time and they lost a lot of property.
Well, that's probably going to be the case again this year. South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia have already been declared states of emergency. And like with us, we have a couple hundred acres of soybean, and they're not ready to harvest yet. So you can't harvest them before time. We're probably not scheduled to harvest our soybeans until October, so in mid-October. So, chances are this storm comes in, we could lose a significant portion of our crop.
Wow.
Those crops that are still in the field. Most of the tobacco now is coming in, so the farmers are kind of in a position, and that's going to be in the buck barns and, things like that. And other vegetable crops, if people are doing their greens and things of that nature, and most of the corn has already been harvested. So, it's still one of those things that farmers, livestock, just this past week, we had some severe lightning, and we lost a couple of head of cattle due to lightning strikes.
Wow. One of the things we were talking about with Yeah, I'm just so afraid we're going to have it with a lot of people in their farm. I know I grew up in the rural North Carolina, and my grandparents were involved in farms and things of that nature, and we actually still have some property that I think we have timber on, and there might be some crops that are there that are being grown by some of my cousins and distant cousins and things of that nature. But I know when I talked to Hadasaya about the organization and everything, you know, there was a time that we were definitely known, meaning African Americans, as farmers and things of that nature. But it seems that we got away from that at some point. Do you have any idea of talking to people why we got away from that, and is there a move to get back to it? Because I know there's a lot of people that are trying to get back into natural cooking, natural living. So it seems like we're trying to get back into farming, but I don't know if we're trying to get back into big farming, because I know a lot of people are probably afraid of like the big corporate farms in terms of farming. So I just wondering what some of your insight was on that.
Well, I definitely think it's systemic, the way that people of color were moved away from farming and agriculture. And everyone knows no farm, no food. And he who controls the food controls the man. So when you begin to tell minority farmers, black farmers, farmers of color, that what they're growing on small scale isn't farming, that's discouraging. And
right.
You know, actually, according to USDA Farm Service Agency, the definition of a farm is simply an owner operating the same tracts of land. And if you look at that definition, it doesn't say a certain amount of acreage. So how many acres do you have to have a farm? There is no minimum land size requirement. But if you would ask most black people or African Americans, how many acres do you have to have a farm, most of them are going to say 10, 15, 20 acres. But in fact, It can be a half an acre. It can be your roof. It can be your basement. It can be your patio. And one of the other requirements in there is in that definition, there's not a dollar amount. However, there is like this little stipulation that they want to see the ability to gross $1,000 in annual sales. Well, that's not hard. If you take a $3 mint plant and you plant it and it spreads and you begin to harvest the leaves, 10 to 15 is about an ounce, and you can sell that for $3. Or if you're doing your seedlings. And so there's a lot of opportunity within that business structure, but most African Americans now say, oh, I grow a garden every year, but that was known in the past as a food plot. And that counts. That's acreage. Those are crops. So going into USDA applying for services or assistance, you wouldn't say I grow a garden. You would say I grow these crops. Even if it's on a half an acre or a tenth of an acre, these are the crops that I'm growing. So that's kind of what happened, I think, over time, is people of color were told, oh, you're just doing a garden. Oh, that's just a hobby. You know, there's nothing to that. It's not going to amount to anything. But yet now we see similarly situated farmers that, you know, aren't of color that are making six figures off a half an acre of land. So how can that be? But what we're doing is gardening.
Yeah, and it just seems that that's just wrong altogether, because we're telling people that all they're doing is gardening if they're like doing it in a rural area like either in Virginia or North Carolina, or even they're doing it in an urban area, because like you mentioned, patios, and people can grow all kinds of stuff on patios. But, I mean, the whole concept back in the day was that at some point we were supposed to get that 40 acres on a mule and everything, and it seems to me that we were discouraged away from that. So basically, even though we had all this property and everything, a lot of the big corporations came in and were like, you know, you don't need that land. You don't know what you're doing with that land. And it seemed like they took a lot of the land from us, and we've probably lost 90% of what we had.
Right. I think they minimized the importance and the significance of the small-scale farmer, of that small family farm that might have been 5, 10, 100 acres, you know, but that was very significant, and especially to local food production. And so when you look back at the significance of our homesteads, you know, we had the greatest asset. We had the land. And unfortunately, a lot of families have lost their land due to heir property or maybe moving away. But if your property has pecan trees on it or pecan trees, that's a cash crop, and those can be insured. Pecans are about $10 to $12 a pound. But most African-American people or farmers of color or landowners who have those trees aren't thinking that as an agricultural product. Or if they have a grapevine or they have an apple tree or a peach tree. You know, if that's agriculture, that's farming.
And even timber, because like I think I mentioned it probably to Mr. Brown when we were talking to him, but I know that the property we have in Halifax County is actually divided between now my mother and her 2 remaining sisters. It was my mother and 3 sisters. The one just passed. That was a lot of that land was timberland, but that timber is definitely very marketable because, I mean, a lot of it is oak trees and other kind of big trees that can be cut and sold as firewood or different other kinds of things that is very much of a cash crop in terms of what's there. And that's not even like a food crop. That's just the timber that's on the land.
Right. And, and agroforestry is very important, and that's U.S. Forest Service. And there again, it's empowerment, and knowledge is definitely the key to our success. And a lot of time when individuals think of USDA, they think of USDA as an agency, but it's not. It's the Department of Agriculture, and it's made up of 16 different agencies within that department. And each one of those agencies has different programs and services that our people can go and apply for.
And like
we're not very good at navigating.
How many applications are there that people can apply for roughly, and how many of them are we actually applying for? I imagine there are probably thousands of things that we could apply for that we don't even know about.
Well, and, a lot of times when African-American people or people in rural America are looking at housing, they think of HUD. They don't think of USDA rural development for the 502 housing program, which is a guaranteed lending that's no money down. And if you're low income, they'll even subsidize the payment. So why are our people still renting when they could be buying? And then there's also the 504 program that is the rehab. And so our elders, our seniors who are 62 years or older can apply for up to $7,200. I think that's the dollar amount. It kind of fluctuates sometimes. But it's a grant, and it doesn't have to be repaid. But no one thinks to go to USDA to get some money to rehab or, build a ramp or, put in a heating and cooling